Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi with Retail Insider. Joining me today is Corinne Pohlmann, who is Senior Vice President of National Affairs and Partnerships with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Thanks for joining us today, Corinne.
Thanks for having me, Miriam.
Well, a lot of talk these days, especially in Quebec and Ontario, and I'm sure across the country, about a fourth wave of the pandemic going to be hitting us, if not has hit us in certain parts of the country. What does that mean for small business owners that we're going to be entering and have entered a fourth wave?
Well, I think it certainly brings anxiety. We do something on a regular basis, which is a small business recovery dashboard, which we've actually included now. Pandemic stress is one of the pieces and elements of it. And 78% of our members are still feeling pandemic stress. That was back in June. So I have no doubt this will add to that level of stress. And what is it going to mean in terms of employees who get sick and what to do about that? Will the government bring back certain restrictions or mask mandates or vaccine mandates? All of those things are sort of uncertain right now. So I think it's a bit of the unpredictability and uncertainty of what the fourth wave actually means in practice. I think most are hopeful that they can continue to operate and that people will continue to go to their stores and shops and restaurants, but time will tell.
Now, do you think, from the CFIB standpoint, do you think what we've experienced in the past through different waves in terms of lockdowns and restrictions, that we've gone past that we might not see that again, and I don't know if you've talked to governments about that?
Certainly, we're encouraging governments to maintain the status quo. We have a lot more tools in the toolbox now to manage through COVID, between vaccines, masks, understanding that when to isolate, when to stay home, when to be able to go out there again when you're no longer, if you do get sick, that you're no longer contagious. So I think the push for us has been, let's maintain the status quo, let Canadians and businesses do what they need to do to operate in this type of environment going forward. This may be with us for a long time, so we need to continue to move our economy forward and live with this and make sure that people are responsible when they do have COVID.
Okay, now the CFIB on a monthly basis publishes its business barometer, gets a sense of the feelings of small business owners across the country. What's the latest barometer tell you about the optimism or the confidence levels of small business owners in Canada?
Unfortunately, it's dipping yet again. It's actually dropped in June about 5 points for the longer term index. It's now into sort of the low 50s, 54, 55. We like to see it between 65 and 70 when the economy is actually growing at its potential. So it's quite a bit lower than where it needs to be. Of course, we've had a lot coming at us over the course of the last few months between supply chain challenges, inflation, labor shortages, and so forth, and global uncertainty. All these things are kind of being thrown at us all at once, and now a fourth wave. It's not a huge surprise that we're seeing it dip yet once again, because of all of those challenges that many businesses are facing right now.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the labor challenges? I've had this discussion with some people just recently, and the question was the why. Why is there so many signs out there, help wanted, or people hiring right now? Can you maybe explain first of all what they're going through, some of these small business owners, and the why behind that?
Yeah, well, as we all know, the unemployment rate is at its lowest point it's ever been. A lot of this has to do, of course, with so many people being laid off during COVID. And now, of course, many of those folks may have moved on to other industries or made other choices. And so it's when businesses were once again ready to bring people back on, it's not simple to suddenly hire a whole staff overnight. It takes time. And when everybody's doing it at the same time, it makes it incredibly competitive to do so. So I think it's a combination of timing in terms of this massive sort of hiring at the same time, people making other decisions, because if you were in the restaurant industry, you got laid off 3 or 4 times over the course of 2 years, you may make other decisions. Same when you look at the healthcare system, there's a lot of people making decisions to get out of the healthcare system. And we're also seeing a lot of that right now. So there's, I think, a lot of shift happening, a lot of decisions being made by folks. We're also reaching our demographic point as well that we had been warned of for many, many years, with baby boomers now basically retiring in larger and larger numbers and the populations behind them not being as large. So I think it's a confluence of all of these events that are really causing a lot of the severe labor shortages that we're seeing in many parts of Canada.
Now, you mentioned, the costs, rising costs on a number of things for businesses, including, including labor, I guess. In this environment, if you're a quick service restaurant and you're offering minimum wage, maybe to attract people, you're going to have to offer a little bit more than that, right? So that's going to up your costs even more, right?
Correct. And we're seeing a lot of that. Increasing wages is the most common way that businesses are trying to attract more labor right now, but even that's not working. So many are trying to get even more creative, thinking about what can they do to bring those staff people into their businesses. It could be bonuses, it could be other perks that they hadn't thought about before, working from home for some people, the flexibility, all of these things are things that businesses are looking at to try to draw more folks. But you're absolutely right. We've seen wage increases go up. Businesses on average are providing higher wages than they have ever had before. All of that drives more inflation, which drives higher costs. And so these are the challenges right now, and hence why we saw a pretty massive shift in the interest rates very recently by the Bank of Canada as well. Whether that'll help or not, it'll certainly hurt a number of folks, including many businesses who have variable rate loans at the moment. But at the same time, hopefully that can help curb higher prices for the long term.
Okay, super. Now, we know throughout the pandemic, in those two years, the federal government and provincial government stepped up, obviously, with a lot of support programs to prop up businesses, keep them running, basically. Are all those programs done now, basically?
Yes, pretty much they're all done. As of May 7th, the last of the COVID programs were shut down. You can still apply for them, however, but you can't apply for any assistance post May 7th. But you have up to 6 months after the ending of a period to apply for that particular period. So if you haven't yet applied for, I guess, going back now to say maybe February of this year, you certainly can for those programs that did exist. But overall, those programs have pretty much ended.
Are there any recommendations that CFIB is currently making before governments in regards to support, and what governments can do to help small business owners in these continuing challenging times?
Yeah, so there's a few things. One, of course, is to help deal with the rising cost of doing business. And first and foremost, we've seen gasoline prices soar. So we've seen some provinces, including Alberta, Newfoundland, Labrador, and Ontario, actually lower their gas taxes to help put a bit of a cap on gas prices. So that's one, getting other provinces to do that, and the federal government. Two would be trying to look at things that can help lower costs for smaller businesses, such as increasing the small business threshold so that more businesses can access the small business tax rate. We've also been looking for ways to government to help with the debt. The average debt on small businesses right now is about $160,000 just from the pandemic. So that's pandemic debt I'm talking about. Our governments help with that. For example, increase the amount forgivable on the CEBA loans, which are going to be coming in. You're going to have to start paying back by the end of next year. And so these are some pieces that we think need to be looked at by government to kind of help businesses through this period.
All right, super. And last thing I wanted to ask you, as Corinne, is the biggest news here in the last few days has been the outage with the Rogers network. What impact did you hear that had on small business owners in Canada?
Yeah, it was quite significant, actually. I know of many anecdotal stories of business owners who, for example, pizza parlor just down the street from me was on Rogers, couldn't take any orders the entire day, had no business basically coming in for one full day. That's significant for a small business to lose that kind of business, especially on a Friday. And so, yeah, I think the impact was much broader than folks, I think, realized. Yes, individuals were put into bad situations, but so were a lot of small businesses who rely on that. And of course, the inability to accept debit was another one that had, I think, an impact on a lot of smaller companies who rely on being able to get interact, and many don't take cash anymore. So you get very limited in terms of your options. So very significant, and we're hopeful that compensation will be fair for those businesses. We know Roger said they're going to do something. Just not clear on the business side what that's going to look like.
All right, super then. Well, thanks for Corinne for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, super. That was Corinne Pohlmann, who is Senior Vice President of National Affairs and Partnerships with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. I'm Mario Toneguzzi with Retail Insider. Thanks for joining us today.